The Ashcroft family's monthly dinners were more about flexing wealth and enjoying food. Tonight, in the sprawling estate just outside Napa Valley, things were bound to be more unbearable than usual. I took my usual seat by the fireplace, watching from the sidelines as my cousins tried to outdo each other in the art of financial bragging. "Just bought a ranch in Jackson Hole," Preston drawled, swirling his wine, his tone oozing pride. "Right next to the guy who owns half of Silicon Valley." Cassandra scoffed, flipping open her designer clutch. "We just closed on a vineyard in Tuscany," she added, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "Private access to the Mediterranean. You can't put a price on that kind of view." I hid my grin behind a glass of iced tea. They had no idea. Suddenly, Aunt Evelyn's voice cut through the chatter. "You've been awfully quiet, Tyler," she said, eyeing me across the table. Preston leaned in, his faux sympathy thick in the air. "We were just wondering about your living situation." There it was, the question I had been waiting for. "What about it?" I replied, setting down my glass. "The duplex in Portland." Preston said, with a smirk, "Still renting, huh?" "Yeah, the one on Alder Street," Cassandra added, feigning surprise. "Didn't know people our age still rented." I fought the urge to laugh. That cramped duplex was actually my company's first acquisition under Swiftstone Holdings. To them, I was just another struggling tenant. But in reality, I was the owner. "I like the space," I said, keeping my tone even. "You're 35, Tyler," Evelyn said, a patronizing smile tugging at her lips. "It's time to grow up. Buy something real." Real? I thought. Like a string of overpriced, soulless developments built on the backs of the people they trampled over for profit. I leaned back in my chair, unbothered. I said quietly, "a billion-dollar portfolio of multifamily buildings, commercial towers, and Ashcroft Plaza." The room fell silent. I could almost hear their hearts skipping a beat. "That building? The one we're all in right now." I continued. "I bought it 6 months ago, through a private equity arm they'll never trace back to me." They had no idea. "Seriously," Preston said, scoffing. "You can't even afford a mortgage." I let them talk, watching the smugness slowly fade from their faces. Soon enough, the lease renewal papers would land on their desks, with my name at the top. Dad finally looked up from his wine glass. Now, Preston, not everyone is blessed with your sharp instincts." Evelyn sighed, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Tyler, we expected more from you. You could have married a hedge fund manager or started a lifestyle blog. Instead, you're this." They thought I spent my days showing cheap apartments to students scraping by on commission checks. What they didn't know was that Tyler Ashcroft, the so-called underachiever, was the one quietly reshaping the real estate game. While they flaunted their wealth, I built mine on integrity and respect. And speaking of real estate, Cassandra interjected, her eyes sparkling with some new gossip. "Have you heard about that situation on Alder Street? Some firm bought the whole block. They're going to tear it down." I kept my expression neutral, even though I was a buyer. I had no intention of demolishing a damn thing. Alder Street was a hidden gem. Historic facades, vintage detailing, rent protection for the long-time tenants who'd lived there for decades. "I'm renovating it," I said coolly. "Really?" Preston smirked. "Deals like that are way out of your league." Evelyn, ever the voice of condescension, added, "Well, Tyler, if you get booted, you can always move back into the guest house. We'll help you find something more respectable. Maybe even someone respectable." "I'm happy," I said flatly, "and so is my landlord." Cassandra gave a tight laugh. "You can't live a small life forever, dear. Ashcroft used to mean something around here. It still did, just not the way they thought. I was Swiftstone Holdings, the anonymous firm they feared, the one quietly acquiring properties and flipping the script on their whole charade. And now, Ashcroft Plaza would get a full audit." My dad glanced nervously at the table, his voice low. "This meeting's partly about business. The board's worried about the new owner of Ashcroft Plaza." "They don't know who owns it, do they?" I asked, my voice barely rising. They think it's some foreign investor, Dad said. Maybe a tycoon who's interested in legacy properties. I smiled to myself. If they only knew the man they were worried about was sitting right here in a second-hand cardigan and scuffed boots. And speaking of accounting, Dad continued, Preston, Cassandra, the board's concerned. They've ordered a full audit. I leaned back, watching them squirm as the truth slowly dawned on them. There would be nowhere to hide. Cassandra's face went pale, and Preston's jaw clenched. They didn't know the half of it. If they thought the audit would be a minor inconvenience, they were in for a rude awakening. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor with a resounding echo. You all had a good run, I said, my voice calm but cutting. But it's over now. The board's about to get a wake-up call. I gathered my jacket, my movements deliberate. Tomorrow morning, Swiftstone Holdings will release a public statement. Ashcroft Plaza will undergo major operational reform. No more shady budgets, no more backdoor deals, no more using this building as your personal ATM. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. I turned to leave the room, but not before glancing at the art on the walls, bought with maintenance funds, of course, and the overpriced couches, which were laughably mismatched. Some of us have early mornings, I added, not bothering to look back as I slung my worn leather bag over my shoulder and made my way to the door. Outside, I breathed in the cool air. My assistant, ILA, was waiting for me in the car, the paperwork for the day already spread out on the seat. Good work today, she said, glancing up from the files. The Ashcroft Plaza board is already in turmoil. They don't even know what hit them. I nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. They'll learn. It's not just about power or wealth. It's about doing things the right way. And that's a lesson they'll never forget. The next morning, my office buzzed with activity. My phone lit up with messages about the audit's public release, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the media caught wind of the scandal. I walked into the boardroom of Ashcroft Plaza, the grand space that had once belonged to them. Now it belonged to me. I had built something real from nothing, while they squandered their inheritance on empty luxuries. Preston was already there, trying to charm a few independent board members. He looked up, his face dropping when he saw me enter. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice shaking slightly. I calmly placed my briefcase on the table and met his eyes. "Tyler Ashcroft," I said with a quiet but firm authority. "Founder and sole owner of Swiftstone Holdings, the company that now owns this building, along with several others your family illegally leveraged." For a moment, the room went deathly silent. Evelyn's face turned ghost white. Cassandra, ever the drama queen, looked like she might faint. "I'm here to review your financials," I said, pushing the audit reports across the table. Preston's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He didn't know what to say. "You thought you could keep this hidden," I continued, my voice unwavering. "But now, everyone will know. Every penny you've misused, every inflated invoice, every shady deal." I turned to Cassandra. "Care to explain these invoices from your husband's firm? Charging 3 times the market rate for basic plumbing." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "What's it going to be?" I asked, scanning the room. "Are we going to work together to restore the legacy this family once had, or are you going to keep hiding behind your lies?" Dad finally spoke, his voice low and pleading. "Tyler, please, we can explain." I raised a hand to stop him. "No, there's nothing to explain anymore." The aftermath unfolded like a business drama, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about principle. The media latched onto the story, and soon enough, Ashcroft Plaza was no longer a symbol of greed. It was a symbol of restoration. Aunt Evelyn resigned from 3 local boards, too ashamed to show her face. Cassandra's husband's firm folded within weeks of the audit release. And Preston? He had nowhere to run. He was finally facing the consequences of his actions. But not everything was bitter. Cassandra, for all her flaws, began volunteering at a transitional housing shelter downtown. She told me later that it gave her more purpose than her gallery openings ever had. Dad, too, changed. He came to me asking to learn the business, not as a father trying to reclaim control, but as a student. He wanted to understand what I had built, 6 months later, I sat at my desk in the Alder Street building. Yes, I kept it. No, I wasn't tearing it down. I was making it work for the people who lived there, for the community I'd invested in. The lease renewals were steady, tenant satisfaction was higher than ever, and the small businesses on the ground floor were thriving. It was everything I'd wanted, something real, built on values, not vanity. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to find my mother standing there, looking a little out of place in jeans and no makeup. "I got your invitation," she said, holding up a small card. "A holiday party at the courtyard." I nodded. "It's not quite your scene." "No," she admitted, glancing around the modest space. "But I'm learning that maybe seen isn't everything." She picked up a photo of me at 23, beaming at my real estate license ceremony. "I never asked," she said quietly, "why this path?" "Because I wanted to build something real," I replied, "not just buy it and flaunt it." She looked at me seriously, her voice soft. "And now you control more than all of us." I nodded, but I knew that control wasn't the goal. Purpose was. A few weeks later, I stood by the garden fountain at the Alder Street holiday party, watching my family finally begin to understand what I'd built. Mom was talking to Mrs. Lopez, a tenant who'd lived here for 38 years. Preston was helping Mr. Keller, a World War II veteran and the longest tenured resident. String lights. Cassandra was laughing with a group of kids, icing sugar cookies. Slowly, they were learning that real wealth wasn't in what you could flaunt. It was in what you preserve, what you share, what you elevate. Dad joined me near the cocoa table. "Your great-grandfather believed buildings should shelter hearts, not just wallets." I nodded. I found his old ledgers. Handwritten notes about protecting tenants. "We forgot that." He looked at me, not as a son who had gone off track, but as someone who'd carried the torch he'd dropped. "You could have ruined us," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Never the point," I replied, watching a little boy twirl under the fairy lights. I wanted to build something that would outlast me. And sometimes, the greatest success isn't in proving them wrong. It's in offering them a better version of right. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly counted out, you might see a little bit of yourself in me. I didn't set out to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted to build something real. Something that couldn't be taken away because it was rooted in values, not vanity. So, what have you built in silence while others doubted you? Let's talk about it. Let's give each other credit for the quiet work, the long nights, the tough choices. And if you're facing a moment like I once did, when the world expects nothing from you, don't shout louder. Just build stronger. You don't need approval to begin. You need purpose and consistency. The rest will come. Support this journey by subscribing to the channel. There are more stories ahead about resilience, redemption, and redefining success on your own terms. Because legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you create. And sometimes, the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's becoming exactly who they said you couldn't be.